So far, we've explored a variety of bash commands. It's getting pretty hard to remember all of them, right? Well, I've got good news and bad news. The bad news is that there's a further level of customization and configuration that comes with each bash command that we've already covered. And those are known as command flags, where you can configure how that command behaves. The good news is Bash is pretty flexible with these customizations, and there's also a detailed official manual which catalogs all of the possible flags to choose from and what effect they have. And so that command is man. And in this case, with man, you have to pass in the command you want to read the manual for. So as a first example, let's take a look at ls and see what the manual has to say about one of the very first commands that we learned. And so it pops up right here in the terminal, gives us a name, a synopsis, and a description. So the name, which we already covered, ls, list directory contents. The synopsis is where you'll find all the flags. And because ls is such a simple command, it has many possible flags to pass in. And the way you pass flags, as it's already shown here in the manual, is with a dash. And so there's a variety of flags which you can pass to ls. The few that will pass in are this h, lowercase h, which will give us the file size, and the h is typically for human readable. And when we combine it with l and with k, we'll get the file size in kilobytes. And also a useful one is the dot entries. And typically in Unix systems, dotted entries are actually hidden files. So you can back out of the manual with Q. And so our standard ls will show us some files. But let's look at that -a, which shows those hidden files. Issuing ls with the -a flag yields a few interesting things. The first is these dot and dot locations, which we'll get into in a future lesson, but these essentially stand for the current location, and dot is the previous location, which would be the projects folder. But we'll get to that in a future lesson. We also see the hidden git folder, which is the repository data for this folder, since we're in this course repository. And for this course, I also made a hidden file just by prepending the dot into the file name. And so again, issuing the normal ls won't show those hidden files. That's its default behavior. But if you pass that a flag, we can see all those hidden files. You may have also noticed that when I issue ls alone, the files are listed horizontally. With another flag, we can make that into a list, which is the -l flag. And returning to the good news side of the story, with Bash, these flags are extremely flexible. We can combine flags, so we can do -l and a, and we'll get both behaviors. We'll see the hidden files, and also we'll see them in a vertical line. So let's issue that. But it gets even easier. Bash doesn't care which order you pass these flags, and you can even pass them as separate flags, and all produce the same output. With some commands, the order of flags does matter, but that's usually the exception to the rule, and you can read in the manual for all commands for when the flag ordering actually matters. But typically, it's not the case. And so let's also look at man for one of the commands we learned last lesson, which was copy. And one of the nice flags with copy is the -r command. And I was intentionally leaving all that out in the previous lesson just to keep it simple. But we can see with -r, for example, we can copy an entire directory and the entire subtree. So if we had some files in a folder, we can copy that entire folder with those files in it to a new location, just for example. The other nice thing about the manual is that the flags are listed in alphabetical order, so they're easy to find. And in some cases, you may even find examples near the bottom of the manual entry. So again, we'll press Q to get out. And just another tip of the hat to Bash to show how flexible it is. Yes, we can even get the manual entry of the manual itself, which shows us what it does: format and display the online manual pages. Great. So in this lesson, we learned about the Bash manual, and we first looked at ls and all the various flags that it has, focusing on the -l and -a commands. And we saw that Bash is rather flexible. It doesn't really care how we provide the flags, in what format or in what order. It typically has the expected effect of combining both of them, or as many flags as we pass. We also looked into the manual entry for the copy command and manual itself. So now that we've taken an initial look at passing flags to commands, we can really get into a lot more complex and granular effects that we can do manipulating data, files, and folders in the shell. And so we'll get started with that in the next lesson.